Oh man, that movie. You know what? You say that movie always makes you want noodles. It always makes me want almond
Panda?
cookies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Kentucky Fried
always
Panda.
want. Yeah, I always want panda. Delicious.
That's what I always say.
Almond cookies. I love almond cookies.
I've had them.
They have such a subtle flavor to them and like a nice crunch. Nice appearance too. Just the one little almond slice just tapped right on top.
I'm telling you, man, we're getting really close to Foodcast with W Diddy. Today we're talking about almond cookies. Yeah, them some almond cookies look real good, huh, Dave?
Yeah, favorite Asian food. Hands down.
Alrighty, welcome back to the Why Do I Talk to You podcast. This is still, I think, Saul Starsheep 4.
Gotta stop saying that. I'm still Dave Naple.
I'm not kidding. Whenever I have to introduce myself, I immediately start rethinking of new tags.
Just phase it out, man.
But I gotta think of something that's good. I mean, I'm not gonna be able to get something as good as Gamer
just
Dave.
be like, I am Solomon.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. I don't even want that.
Maybe if you use your last name, it'd flow better.
Welcome to Encina Cast. All right. Anyway,
yeah, that'll work.
Sorry for that. All right. Welcome back to another a movie podcast episode. We've almost talked nothing exclusively as far as animation goes, but Disney and Pixar. Almost exclusively, right? I don't think we've spoken about anything else.
It was our favorite episode.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The last time we talked about DreamWorks.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
I seem to remember something.
Do you?
Yeah.
I don't.
Might have had a Spanish
Oh, you mean Jungle Book, right?
No,
yeah,
no,
that
no,
one.
Not
That one
Jungle
was bad.
Book.
No.
It was in a different jungle.
Oh, Tarzan.
Different other jungle. Those are like more eastern jungle. This is like a western jungle. Like Native Americans and such.
You mean Scott Pilgrim?
Bad
Those are
Spanish
those are Canadians.
No,
They're
this
not.
is Souther America. Souther of America.
All right. So, DreamWorks. Yeah, DreamWorks has several stinkers. I
have an interesting place in like the animation world.
Yeah.
You know?
If nobody is initiated out there, you should know that DreamWorks was created by a disgruntled Disney employee.
Right.
Not unlike Don Bluth, and with Don Bluth pictures back in the 80s and 90s. Jeffrey Katzenberg, I don't really know all the details. I mean, I did once upon a time, but I don't really care that much. But basically, he split off, and he, alongside Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, created DreamWorks Animation. And their big hit premiere was Ants.
I mean,
that was certainly a movie.
It was their premiere. I don't know how big or hit it was.
It wasn't.
Right.
Not to mention it was pretty much there only to compete with Bug's Life. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we look back on their whole history up until right now of this movie we're going to talk about, Kung Fu Panda, which released in 2008. Up until then, they had maybe about 2 winners under their hands.
They had 3 winners.
Well, 3 winners,
they were all called Shrek.
They had 3 box office winners, but as far as quote unquote quality movies, they had Prince of Egypt.
Yeah, okay.
They had Shrek
really
1,
good.
and I like Shrek 2 as well.
Yeah.
But that's it, isn't it?
I mean, Shrek 3 was out, wasn't it?
But that wasn't that was a moneymaker, right? That wasn't.
I don't know. I've never actually watched it all.
Neither have I, actually. I do like 2, actually.
Yeah, I do too.
But what else is in there? The Bee Movie, the internet's favorite movie, and El Dorado, of course.
I mean, it seems like other people like that. But
Shark Tale.
Yeah, that was the thing.
A couple of Aardman pictures,
was Osmosis Jones DreamWorks?
No,
Was
Osmosis
that
Jones
Blue Sky?
was WB Animations, I think. Blue Sky wasn't out
that
yet.
Makes more sense.
Because I remember they had a TV show after that too. Because they were
did.
just that good. We should probably talk about Osmosis
No,
Jones.
we definitely
That is an interesting movie to discuss.
I've never watched that movie, and I've never wanted to.
Oh, that settles it. We are watching.
No.
That settles it.
No.
You should not have said that you've never seen it. It is done.
No.
It is set in stone. So
Anyway.
we'll have a double feature too. Osmosis Jones and the Iron Giant.
Oh God, Iron Giant. Maybe I'll like Iron Giant now. I don't know. This is definitely not something I was interested in.
This is
Anyway,
beautiful. My hands are rubbing and devious.
Anyway, DreamWorks is actually pretty good nowadays.
Yeah, they really are. They have. I don't know what happened.
Well, this movie happened, in my opinion.
Well, maybe it was. I will just certainly say that this is probably the best movie. I'd say this is probably my favorite DreamWorks movie.
Really?
Or at least this franchise, yeah.
Okay.
Because I do like How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
But I like Kung Fu Panda better.
I never liked. A lot of people really love How to Train Your Dragon, and I can see why. But I never quite got into it as much as Kung Fu Panda.
I don't love it. How to Train Your Dragon. I still have yet to rewatch number 2, and I actually kind of liked number 2.
Yeah.
But I'm not so head over heels with it. I guess after Kung Fu Panda would be either Shrek 1 or 2, but Shrek 1 and 2 are really nostalgic in my mind. I remember Shrek being the one movie that all my teachers put on before Christmas break.
Yeah, teachers did really like putting that movie on.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why was that?
It was simple, man.
I guess. Was it because they could enjoy it too? Because it was a little bit more adulty?
No.
I don't know.
Teachers aren't watching the movie at the same time.
You don't think so?
No, they're trying to catch up on all their other work, so they don't have to worry about it during the Christmas break.
All right.
Yeah, so I'd probably say Kung Fu Panda and the Shrek ones are probably my favorite. But you know what? Speaking personally, I've been burnt out by DreamWorks by the time Kung Fu Panda came out, and I was fully on Pixar's side. Ratatouille, we just talked about that, came out just the year before.
I mean, how much had you actually been paying attention to what they were putting out?
I mean,
you know what I mean? When you say burned out, it kind of implies that you had tried their stuff and it was no good. I just remember seeing the ads for most of them and being like, yeah, okay, that can exist over there,
Well, B-movie, there was no way I was going to see B-movie.
No.
I still haven't.
What child is like, Mom, it's Seinfeld. I want to go see that movie. My favorite comedian.
Well, it's like, Mom, it's a cartoon.
It's got
we see
bee
now,
in it.
know.
I love bees.
Have you ever even seen any of the
No.
B-movie memes? I've seen
the memes?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've actually watched. I mean, I've seen that they exist. I don't think that I've watched any of them.
I've never actually seen any of them in full, but the internet is the worst place in the world. The internet is truly the worst, you people. You know that Matt Pat that Matt Pat video where he mathed out all of the long ones?
Wait, what? Oh, yeah.
The game theory video, yeah.
Right, yeah.
The internet, you are the worst. You should be ashamed of yourself, but you're not going to be.
No, not really.
So anyways, again, Kung Fu Panda, here we are. So this definitely leading up to this movie, Kung Fu Panda is definitely the best movie that came out of this sort of era. Prince of Egypt is also a really awesome movie.
Yeah.
Kung Fu Panda, though, is an original story for the most part. I mean, it's not based off. Well, it's not based off any source material. You know what I mean? So, Dave, is this not your favorite Pixar or DreamWorks movie?
No, it's not.
Oh, what is?
Kung Fu Panda 2.
Okay.
What?
No, I gotta be specific.
Yeah, that is. That's.
I guess when I'm referring to Kung Fu Panda, I'm referring to the franchise. I guess.
Oh, sure, but in terms of franchise, what is there? There's this, there's Shrek, and there's How to Train Your Dragon. That's only really 3. If you're talking about individual movie, I don't know.
I'm so lost on any recent movies they've done lately?
Didn't they do some the Box Trolls? Was that them?
No, that is that's Leica.
This is kind of. We should stop displaying our ignorance of everything they've done and just talk about this movie and why we like it.
Whatever. Who's listening? So Kung Fu Panda. I did miss this in the theaters. I didn't see it.
I didn't see it in the theaters either.
Okay. I think the combination of Jack Black and some sort of martial arts
And
movie
also Jack Black.
well, a martial arts movie parody, I assumed, it's not, but I sort of assumed that it was.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm kind of done. And then I remember it was Jackie Chan's in this movie too. I'm like, is he a major character? No, he's a voice actor. Oh, okay. And then if I want that, I'll watch the Jackie Chan Adventures.
Yeah.
Although he wasn't even the voice in
was
there
not
either.
his voice.
A really slightly offensive imitation of Jackie Chan's. How was that okay?
Because Jackie Chan said it was okay.
Yeah,
And if Jackie Chan
he's
says
in the
it's
intro
okay.
too. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all good.
He had like the things at the end too, where he would talk about his movie making days.
Oh,
or
that's
whatever.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
It's all
truly,
cool.
truly the best time.
What a
period.
gentleman.
Yeah. So comes out in June 2008, Kung Fu Panda. The first time I saw this movie was on a tour bus with Dave. I think it might have been concert band tour this time.
Probably.
And I died watching it, man. Oh man, I absolutely died. I had no idea what I was missing.
Yeah.
When I watched it, my goodness. And it still stands up today, man.
Yeah.
We
There's
always
nothing wrong with this. The animation's still great. Like it doesn't look dated at all, really.
No.
Yeah.
We always like to try to watch movies before we talk about them on an episode. And so, of course, we did this time as well. And yeah, like all the jokes still completely land.
Yeah.
All the animation is still done really well. All the stylized animation, too, with like slow mo effects and freeze frame effects.
Yeah, so
and even
it's
the
really
different styles of animation, like in the flashbacks and whatnot, work still very, very well.
Yep.
It is a good movie.
It is a good movie.
So the movie starts with Jack Black.
Well, hold on, pause. What had Jack Black done before this?
Oh, he did a lot of stuff. He was already the name.
Okay. Well, I know he was the name, but like as you know, I don't know if those movies were for me necessarily as a kid. You know, so I'm not. I mean, had he done Tenacious D?
Oh yeah, Tenacious D had been a thing all throughout the 90s.
Okay, that's what I figured.
As far as
Well,
like,
the movie, I mean.
the movie came out, I'm fairly certain it did. Let me look.
Okay.
The movie, yeah, it did. It came out about 2 years before. Along with that, before then was Nacho Libre. That's
Was
like
that really before?
yeah, it was.
Wow, crazy.
And then King Kong. You remember he was in King Kong?
No.
Did you ever see that movie?
No.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, rather, it's okay that you haven't seen
Oh,
it.
School of Rock. School of Rock came out before this, right?
Was yes, must have been
Okay.
way before then. I'm still looking back here.
Yeah.
King Kong is an 05. Shark Tale was an 04.
Was he in that?
I guess so. I've never
right.
seen it. He had a cameo in Anchorman, which was also 04. School of Rock was 03.
Okay, yeah.
He was a voice in Ice Age as well. Yeah. And then he was in
Alright.
Shallow Hal. So other like smaller roles like going in before then. So he was a
Yeah.
name. And I mean, come on, he was in King Kong before then also. So he was a name. And
Everybody, King Kong.
well, it's just because everybody that movie was a hullabaloo.
Was it?
It was. It was an
I
absolute
mean,
hullabaloo.
for me, and I think for the audience of this movie, like speaking kids, I feel like the most important one on that list is probably School of Rock. Because that was
Nacho
just him
Libre.
being funny.
Nacho Libre.
I might be, yeah, that's a fair point. It might be Nacho Libre.
School of Rock, Nacho Libre. He was a known force in kids movies.
Yeah.
he was.
Because he's a funny guy, darn it.
He really is.
Yeah.
Come on. I know Jack Black has his haters, but like
What's wrong with you?
I really want to meet him.
Yeah.
Although I'll make a fool of myself, I'm sure.
He'd be way over the
Oh,
top.
Jack Black, how are you doing?
He'd be way over the top for me, I wonder how much of that persona actually comes out and like who he is. But
I mean, maybe, but like I'm sure he's at the end of the day, he's just like a cool dude.
yeah,
You know?
sure. Anyway, Jack Black is kind of the pull for this movie, and so that's how we start.
Yeah, he really is. And in fact, Jack Black is pretty much completely embodied in the character of Poe also.
Yeah.
Like this, it really does. I can't find any evidence for it, but like it just seems like this whole character was written specifically with Jack Black in mind.
Yeah, I can't really imagine anyone else doing this character. Yeah,
It's great though. He does
Yeah.
he does it really well because he plays it as Jack Black, and yet it's totally believable coming out of this animated panda.
yeah,
So it starts out with him narrating this story of this mysterious warrior who is loved and feared at the same time, and everybody loves him. And the Furious Five, this group of 5 masters, was also like friends with him. We should hang out, you know.
hang
And they're all friends. And then you find it's just a dream. He actually works at this little noodle restaurant with his father, the goose.
Did they ever say his dad's name?
Let me look really quickly.
I don't
It's
think say
Mr.
it in the
Ping.
movie.
It's Mr. Ping's
Oh,
Mr. Ping's
Ping.
noodle house.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, his father's a goose, and he works in this noodle house with him. But like, of course, he only wants to do kung fu. He has like all these figures of the Furious Five masters, and he has all these posters.
He's got all these shurikens on his wall.
Yeah, like he's aware of like the lore and like the legends of all these like kung fu heroes and whatnot. That's what he really wants. So, meanwhile,
Oh, we should mention who voices his dad.
the illustrious James Hong.
Yeah.
If you don't know that name, you have heard his voice.
Yeah,
like
you have.
he usually plays like the same role of like, you know, the Chinese
old,
like older
Asian guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like not the wise old Asian guy.
No,
like
the goofy one.
Yeah. Man, but he plays his role so well.
He's in Mulan as what's his name? I don't remember
As
that guy's name.
Oh, this is embarrassing.
The advisor guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is embarrassing.
How often do they say his name?
Oh, his
though?
name is actually Chifu in that
That's
movie.
right,
Yeah.
Chifu.
Yeah. But he's in a lot of other stuff. His filmography is actually huge.
Diablo.
Diablo,
Diablo
as
3.
competition.
Yeah.
But like his filmography is huge because he's a bit player. You know what I mean? He only plays the bit roles, but he does them so well. And from what I understand, he's always super dedicated to each of those roles too. He's just.
I mean, it comes through in this character in this movie too.
He loves his work
For sure.
Kung Fu Panda 2, we'll talk about later. He definitely ups up his character so much. Too.
Yeah, he does.
So meanwhile, we go up to the Jade Palace, which is like the home base for everything kung fu. Basically, that's where the Furious Five live and train as well.
The Furious Five are all like, they're all animals based on like different kung fu styles, right? Martial arts style.
Yeah, there's Tigress, who's the master of the tiger style.
Right.
Crane, same. Viper, same.
Same.
Mantis, same. And Monkey.
Who's Jackie Chan?
Who is Jackie Chan? Has maybe a grand total of 5 lines. In the
Yeah,
whole movie.
maybe. I think I'm more just 4.
So their leader is this cute little red panda named Master Shifu, voiced by Dustin Hoffman. That's the only weird casting I think is in the whole movie. Dustin Hoffman is amazing, and so he does this role really well. But like, it's still just an interesting voice cast in my opinion. I don't know. It doesn't destroy the movie for me, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't really distract me, but I don't know him for much else, so that helps.
Of course you don't.
No, of course I don't.
So he gets summoned by his master, who's still there. His name is this big old Galapagos tortoise named Master Oogway, voiced by his name is Randall Duck Kim. He's like a famous like Korean actor basically.
Okay.
He gets a vision that you don't know who this is yet, but this crazy snow leopard thing named Tai Lung will return, and that completely scares the crap out of Shifu. And so he sends more people out, and so
he sends this duck to be like,
go tell him at this prison that they have him in to double everything.
Yeah.
And so they're all like, you know, the only thing that can stop him is the Dragon Warrior, and they're all like, well, how do we find this Dragon Warrior? Like, what do we do?
And Ugo is like, I don't know.
That brings me into the humor of this movie. So Shrek is funny. Shrek 2 is funny.
Yeah.
Their humor though is we sort of said this in the El Dorado cast where DreamWorks definitely tried to be the more like edgy humor studio.
Those
so
are more
like
adult.
Yeah, so some of their humor is like based off of like sneaking in a swear or like, you know, more like toilet
like
humor.
A double entendre.
And entendre humor and whatnot. So a lot of their humor was that's what I think of when I think of Shrek, and I think of Shrek 2. Shrek 2 does that a lot also.
Yeah.
But Kung Fu Panda is much more organic in their comedy. Like it's more character driven.
Yeah.
Oogway is the wise leader, right?
Yeah.
He is completely, you know, unstoppable. He is amazing. He shows a couple of scenes where he does that. At the same time though, he's like completely at peace with life.
Yeah.
And he's also completely okay with just messing with people too.
And it does such a good job of showing that quickly too, because he gets off like Shifu hears that like Oogway called for him. He's like, Master, you called for me? And he gets down very slowly from his little stick. And like kind of introduces bad news. And then there's all these candles around him. Because you know, there's all candles lit, and he just starts blowing them out. With this fantastic like facial animation of like this turtle, which I don't know how they did, but it looks great. And like his big old long neck. And she was just looking at him like, I don't have all day. I kind of.
And there's a point where like Oogway's about to like talk to him, and then he just. Oh my gosh! And so Shifu just blows them all out in one single like swipe.
Kung fu swing, yeah, whatever.
You were saying. And oh man, the first time I saw this movie, most of Uguay's lines and a couple of Poe's lines caught me completely off guard.
Yeah.
In the best way, I think. Like I was on a tour bus. Has anybody here ever seen a movie on a charter bus? It's the worst experience in the world. You're always either too close to the speaker or too far from the speaker, or too far from the monitor,
screen,
or just too dang close to it, or you're just trying to sleep because you've seen this movie already, and so you're just like, oh, I can't do anything I want to do here. And so, but I don't know how, but I managed to have a really awesome experience still watching it there.
Who were you sitting with?
It wasn't you because you were sitting next to Sam.
I don't think so.
Maybe I was sitting next to.
Okay. Never mind.
Sorry if somebody has a good memory of sitting next to me watching Kung Fu Panda.
It was me. I had the best time with you. How could you forget me?
But I do remember, seeing you react to me react also, because you had already seen it and I hadn't.
Yeah.
And just reacting to everything that I just didn't know was coming. It was great. Okay, so we have this scene.
But yeah, I mean, the humor is weird because it tries to catch you off guard, right? It always hits you with what you're not expecting. But the movie as a whole doesn't feel like, and you talked about this, where it doesn't feel like it doesn't take itself seriously. Because it does. It feels like it's touching on some stuff that they want you to like get and hold on to. And they're like, this is serious and we want you to take it seriously. But it never takes itself too seriously. Or no, it's not even that. It just like, it feels character driven. It feels like, yeah, this is what this character would do. So it doesn't actually feel like it came out of left field. It's just like, well, that's Oogway. You're like, well, that's Poe. And you can just laugh at it without feeling like they're trying to pull you out of what the movie's doing, you know?
That's what I mean. It's like the characters are good characters.
They're strong characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, whenever I say good characters like in a movie, like I'm always feeling like it should be like, oh, they go through this big arc, or like, you know, they like, no. But it's not character in the way of character arc. It's character in the way of personality.
They have a character who you feel like, writers always like to say that if you're writing a story and you start to realize that your character is taking it in a direction that you didn't want it to go because the character's so strong.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of when you know you've made a good character. Because when you've made a character who's established enough and like you know what they're like and what they want and how they would react in this situation, even if it isn't what would stereotypically happen in this situation, like that's when you have a good character, when they're consistent and their actions all make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't take you out because you're like, oh yeah, that is exactly what Oogway would do here.
It's
and it establishes it so quickly. It's really impressive.
Yeah. It's almost like they combine two like old character tropes. There's the old character trope of the one who is only wise and only speaks in nothing but proverbs. And then there's the senile, like, old character. You know what I mean? Because Oogway kind of does both. And the combination of which is the perfect balance to where, well, we'll get to this later, but to where when something happens to that character, you're affected very deeply.
Yeah.
Okay, so they talk about the Dragon Warrior, that this is a thing. Prophecy, yada, yada. You kind of know what's going to happen. But what happens is that there's a big call in the valley where they all live. That they're gonna decide who the Dragon Warrior is, and they all just assume that it's gonna be one of the Furious Five because they're the best fighters like in the whole area.
That's just implied. It's not like inviting people to come try out and like see this. It's like come see the five, show off their skills, and see who winds up being the Dragon Warrior.
Right.
Like it's gonna be a big old show, big old party.
So Poe hears about this and he goes up there. I guess I should mention also he kind of lied to his dad just to make him happy that he had this dream about noodles. And according to his dad, when you have the noodle dream, then you're finally worthy to hear about the secret ingredient in his secret ingredient soup. And Poe is just sort of saying this just to make him happy, you know, but Kung Fu is really what he wants to do. So he goes up because he wants
there under like the guise of like, yeah, I'm going up there to sell noodles, Dad.
Yeah.
Sure.
But he's really going up there to watch Kung Fu because that's what he wants to do. He can't make it up the steps because he's a big panda.
Well, not with his cart. Because he initially like brings the cart like he's going to, and then he's like, all right, this is not going to work for me.
So he can't make it in before the gates closed. He tries several visual gags to try to get in.
They're good visual gags.
They're good visual gags.
They play on your expectations a little bit.
It's good cartoony humor. Shrek never really played too much on cartoony humor.
No, it was a little too realistic.
Yeah, it was trying to be too much.
Style was trying. Sure. That's fine. It's not the direction it wanted to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tried several cartoony attempts to get in there. He then tries a fireworks-laden chair to rocket him into them.
Like you do.
His dad finds him And kind of like, that's when Poe has to tell him like,
I love kung fu.
when his chair does nothing, which is perfectly timed.
Yeah.
But then, of course, it does end up going off.
Lots of visual gags there as well, with him running into walls and scraping his face on everything. And
So he flies out of the sky, it appears, in this big, wonderful display of fireworks into the ground and kind of gets knocked out a little bit. Before then, though, Oogway like stops the crowd because he senses the dragon warrior nearby.
yeah, that was what sort of triggered Poe's like extreme measures. He's like, I am going to choose the dragon warrior, and Poe's like, I've got to get in. And then all this happens and such and such.
So the Furious Five lines up because they're waiting to be pointed at, whoever it is. Poe comes to see Oogway pointing at him. And yeah, they're all like, oh, it's the dragon warrior, yay! And so they all carry him into the palace.
The whole time he's like, I don't know.
Guys, I don't wait. So
okay.
So the five is like completely heartbroken, and so is Shifu. Shifu is just sort of like, you're wrong, right? Like, of course, it's one of these guys. It's not. You're wrong, right? You're wrong. And so he basically tries to devise a plan where he'll be able to get him out of there, like before anything happens.
By basically tormenting him with ridiculously difficult.
Because of course he's not the Dragon Warrior.
Yeah.
Right? Of course he's not.
Right.
So that's basically what happens. Fast forwarding quite a bit. That's basically what happens. Oh, there's also another scene where we actually go to the prison. Because the messenger finally gets there, and you see that Tai Lung is in this completely high security prison only devoted to him because he's that dangerous. It's like way several leagues underground.
Yeah, all with a bunch of rhinos, kind of like straight out of Robin Hood. I just realized that the guards in that movie are rhinos too.
He's in this turtle shell that's like outfitted with all these things that are like hitting his nerves,
his pressure points or whatever.
Yeah, and then his arms are like outside of a cliff, like being chained together by these heavy rocks, so he can't move there. He's completely immobilized, basically.
Except the while, for his tail.
That's right. All the while, all the guards are completely cocky about how high security their prison is. And like showing the poor duck around, like, oh well, you can never escape here. And the duck is like, can I just go now, please?
Yeah, I believe you. It's okay. I don't need to.
So, because he's a duck though, and because he's sort of being jerked around a lot by this poor rhino, he ends up leaving a feather, which. I mean, it's kind of fast forwarding, but that is essentially how Tai Lung gets out.
Yeah.
But we jump back to the Furious Five and with Poe, and yeah, there's several scenes where the Furious Five are training. Poe just gets rocked every single time.
Yeah, a lot of visual gags here too. And I mean, you could talk about the part where with sort of the training. So there's a part where he like goes into their training building, which you had seen earlier in the movie, sort of very briefly. And so he like accidentally gets knocked onto it. And Saul was just pointing out, like, in a lot of other movies, this would be the part where he just like accidentally breezes through the whole thing and everyone's shocked and but that is not what happens. he just gets knocked around in every place imaginable and thrown around and blown up and singed and all that good stuff.
Yes. And if you haven't seen it, he's not exaggerating.
Yeah.
Blown up and singed and everything that all happens.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's great.
So yeah, lots of sequences where Poe is just failing a lot. But he's still sort of trying to push on because he wants to be good at kung fu. He wants to keep pushing on.
And there's because you could tell he like isn't really sure what's happening, but he's like trying to play along because he like actually respects these people, right? Because he like respects Shifu and he respects Oogway. He's like, well, I mean, I guess I'm here, so like I'll do what you want me to do. Like you're the master, but he's like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here, but like, come on, like I'm here, like I'm not gonna turn that down. Like
yeah.
It's interesting.
So we basically, more fast forwarding, we get to the scene where Poe is stress eating all these peaches by a cliff.
Yeah.
Oogway kind of comes up behind them and it's just like, I see you found the sacred peach tree of eternal wisdom or whatever it is. And you just turn around, Poe has like 15 peaches just like shoved in his mouth.
Oh, I thought it was just a normal peach tree.
And Oogway again is speaking. Well, okay, jeez, his dialogue is so great.
Yeah.
Again, playing with your expectations of what you expect this character to be, and not in the most drastic way, but like, what does he say? Something like, like, "Ah, I totally just made a fool of myself." Uguay just goes, totally.
He's like, I probably sucked more than anyone in the history of sucking.
Probably.
And the 5 totally hate me. Totally. It's like, oh, okay.
But Uguay just completely encourages him, tries to get him to keep, moving on, not to think about the future, not to think about the past, but to focus on the now because it is a gift.
Because it's a gift. And that's like, I asked Saul, I was like, I hear that a lot now. Where did it come from before this? And we were both kind of like, I don't know.
I'm not really sure. I feel like I've
feel
heard
this
it
is
before
where
this
everyone
movie.
knows it from now.
I don't know. I don't hear anybody saying like, well, it's just like Kung Fu Panda says.
I hear people saying that.
Really?
I feel like I've heard that.
I've never heard that. I've heard the saying, but anyways.
Sure.
So, so then Tai Lung fully escapes.
Yeah.
In a great action sequence, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of great action sequences.
They
must have had a lot of fun animating this movie.
I was gonna say, Dave, I wonder if movies like this would have truly existed if it weren't for The Incredibles. I feel like The Incredibles sort of proved that you can do CG movies and make them action oriented and actually good. Yeah,
that's an interesting theory. Yeah, I can't really think of. I mean, Mulan didn't have cool action scenes, but it was kind of military, and there were some cool things in that movie, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't like this, and certainly not in CG.
Right.
Yeah, but. Yeah, it's interesting. That definitely wasn't the direction of things up to this point.
Right.
Or at least up to The Incredibles.
Because there's a lot of like actual hand-to-hand combat, but this whole scene is mostly Tai Lung
Just doing flips.
Pretty much doing flips and like maneuvering through all the odds that are against him and stuff.
Knocking giant trebuchet bolts all around. Just
the visuals are really awesome. Like there's one part where. Actually, there's several times where they're just all like, he's not going to get past this, and he gets past this. Well, he's not going to get past this. He gets past that. He really won't get past this. He really gets past that.
He really gets past it.
But one of those moments is where like at least like 1 million archers are like up there, and they shoot all arrows at him. Like there's no way to escape that. But he finds a way to escape it. And of course the visuals are all like
all
in
of the arrows
slow-mo.
have they have like these red feather tips at the end. So it looks really nice.
This film really does play a lot with slow motion and freeze frames, which I think is supposed to be more or less callbacks to like 70s kung fu films that did that a lot.
Yeah.
It sort of played a lot with the frame, like with slow-mo shots or with freeze frame shots and whatnot. And they do that quite a bit in here. Like there's usually a scene where like Tai Lung just like completely rocks somebody's face and it'll just like freeze on that person's face getting rocked. Yeah, exactly. Slow-mos happen a lot here too, either just like to show some incredible feat they're doing or just like fighting in slow-mo and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's good. It's really visually appealing.
Yeah, all the kung fu looks legit too. Especially with like the 5 and Tigress. Like I feel like all her stuff looks really like real. Like what you would expect kung fu to look like, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he gets out of the prison, and the poor duck is still there. And so he just grabs the duck by the neck. Man, I feel for this guy. And
he gets away. It's fine.
He does, yeah. And tells him to go back to Shifu and tell him that he's fully escaped. And so he does. And he eventually gets back and tells Shifu that he escaped. So Shifu immediately runs over to Uguay. And all the while, like, Shifu is saying, like, we need the actual dragon warrior. Like, it was an accident, right? There are no accidents,
You said that already. Twice. That was not an accident either.
Thrice.
3 times.
And so Uguay has to give him like, he has to talk him down again and, telling him that like, the dragon warrior will also give you inner peace and stuff like that. You just have to trust me and yada, yada.
Yeah. Have we got into like Tai Lung's backstory at this point?
Oh,
there's some interactions where Poe is kind of interacting with the 5, and his interactions with them are kind of cool too, because at first they start off like really awkward and it's kind of obvious that they really don't like him, but eventually like
Viper seems to feel bad, right?
Yeah, Viper's kind of warms up to him. She's like, oh, this poor guy is like really going through a lot and I don't want to hurt him. It's just kind of like, he didn't ask for this, like, and
Crane is just sort of like apathetic a little, I guess.
Crane just kind of wants his space, and Tigress hates his guts. Monkey is played by Jackie Chan, so he doesn't actually say anything. And Mantis, I don't know. Mantis eventually kind of sides with Viper. So anyway, in the midst of one of those scenes, Tigress winds up explaining Tai Lung's backstory. which turns out what's like. Well, you can tell it. I feel
Well,
like you,
Okay, well, so basically, Tai Lung arrives at the doorstep of the Jade Palace as a baby.
which is like never explained either.
Yeah,
It's-
just a
it doesn't,
little
it's just like,
abandoned
whatever.
baby, right?
Yeah.
Shifu discovers him and like raises him as his own and finds that he has this crazy aptitude for kung fu. And so he trains him like all the way until adulthood.
Basically, like assuming that he's the Dragon Warrior.
Pretty much, yeah. And turns out he's like extremely lethal as well. Like
Yeah.
he's crazy. So when he was like old enough and whatnot, and he's all like, "So I'm the Dragon Warrior, right?" Uguay's like, "No." The line in the movie is, "But Master Uguay saw darkness in his heart."
Yeah, some real Kingdom Hearts.
Real Kingdom Heartsy, yeah. But so basically, this completely enrages him, and he goes on this big old tirade and is like ransacking the castle and just like beating up a ton of people.
Villagers, yeah.
Yeah. He even he beats up Shifu pretty much, and he goes over to Uguay. Well, rather, he's trying to just go ahead and forcibly take the dragon scroll,
Which is like this scroll and this crazy dragon above this little pond.
and which is supposed to like reveal the powers of the Dragon Warrior that only the Dragon Warrior is allowed to read.
Yeah.
So he's about to forcibly take it. Uguay just
Stops him cold.
stops him cold with just a couple of nerve hits with his fingers.
Yeah. With like his big turtle fingers too, which makes it really satisfying.
Yeah,
He's
just
got like really big turtle nails. Yeah.
Like that. It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
So he's knocked out cold, and that's how he gets inside the whole prison there. Like, and that's
Yeah.
where he's there.
When that's all to say, like basically that's why Shifu doesn't have inner peace. It's like it really messed him up. Mm-hmm. So
And Tigress has like vested interest in this too, because she sort of got into the school in the same way, and she's also a big cat because Tai Lung's a snow leopard. And like you see a couple of scenes exactly mirroring Tai Lung's training, but Shifu at this point is just completely distraught and just sort of like, yeah, do better, whatever.
yeah.
So that's why he doesn't have inner peace. So he goes over to Uguay, like we, back over to here, and Uguay just tells him, the Dragon Warrior will give you inner peace, and he dies.
He dies.
It's a very beautiful scene. They're
Yeah.
they're over by the peach tree, and a bunch of peach blossoms just sort of like float in the air. The main theme in the movie plays. The score was written by Hans Zimmer, John Powell, and great score, and plays up in a nice little crescendo. And he just sort of like is one with like the chi
The
of kung
universe.
fu, like
Yeah.
that. But the point is that he's no longer with them,
So
and this was
oops.
good. This was good too, because like in other tropes, he would have like died fighting or something, or
Yeah.
like somebody would have like killed him in the night or something. Either way, you wouldn't have had the guy who could just take out the master villain
Yeah.
in just a couple of finger hits, right? But this was a good way for him to go out, I think.
Yep.
And just to leave Shifu completely in charge. At this point, Po is pretty much completely warmed up to everybody because he is still an amazing noodle cook and makes them dinner for everybody. And that's when Shifu reveals to everybody that Tai Lung has actually escaped. Po just decides to run away because he's
at
like,
this
yep,
point,
nope.
He's like, all right, this was fun when there wasn't a crazy psycho snow leopard coming to kill everyone and all our hopes hinged on me. But maybe not quite now.
There's actually a nice scene right there, actually, where like Po is like talking about his like futility to like Shifu, and Shifu is like trying to be, as stern a leader as like, and following Uguay's line, advice of just like, he's the Dragon Warrior, teach
You gotta
him.
believe in him, yeah.
And Po was just like, how are you actually going to train this? And Shifu was just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
The next morning, actually that night, the Furious Five realized, they're like, you know what, guys, we're just gonna have to do this ourselves.
Even though Shifu tells him specifically, like, don't do that.
Right.
Tigress kind of runs off, and then the others are like, yeah, we'll come help you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
The next morning, Shifu like awakens to hear not much. So he sort of like walks around the cabin and hears a lot of breaking and a lot of ransacking happening. It's in the pantry, and Po is just like breaking into like cabinets and stuff and drawers, like just not even like rolling it out to open it. He's just
Just like punching them and like reaching in and grabbing
food.
things.
And he finds that when he's motivated by food, he's actually strangely acrobatic.
Yeah.
He's like up 10 feet high doing full splits.
Yeah, he tells
because-
them like Monkey keeps his cookies, his almond
his
cookies.
almond cookies.
Very important, almond cookies.
and he's just munching him.
Yeah.
So then Shifu realizes that he can't train him the way that he trained the Furious Five. He needs to basically motivate him with food.
Yeah.
So there's a big, wonderful training sequence, just like any other training montage you've ever seen, but in this case, it's Po.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everything is like food related. Like he's trying to like make like there's one where he's doing push-ups to like eat something on the ground.
But he can't quite get low enough.
because there's like a big thing of like charcoals underneath his belly.
Oh, yeah.
So he can't stay low enough. He has to go up anyways. And so that in effect makes him do push-ups. All this culminates into this big like quote unquote fight scene where they're trying to eat some dumplings.
He tells him, like, "Oh, you're free to eat some dumplings.
And he's like, I can just eat them. You're not going to do anything.
Go ahead."
Okay. He takes them up with his chopsticks, and then what happens?
Shifu
Shifu just like zooms on over and gets it, or just like stops him every single time.
Yeah.
So then, they fight over the final one, and like now you see that like Po actually has like gotten in some really awesome training.
Mm-hmm.
As long as he's thinking about dim sum. I mean, isn't that really all of us?
Yeah, isn't that dim sum?
So before this happens though, so the Furious Five actually runs into Tai Lung over this like really big like precarious rope bridge.
Yeah.
And I mean, long story short, they think they have him, but
It's
then
a really good fight scene.
It is. It is.
And they all get to like show off, and it's pretty cool. They work together, teamwork. It's awesome. It's actually a really good fight scene.
But Tai Lung comes back and gets him with his nerve attacks.
Yeah, turns out he knows that now too.
Just like how Oogway did before.
Yeah.
So that's scary. But he purposely doesn't do it to Crane so that he can take them all back to the temple and just be like an emissary, like I'm coming.
Yeah.
So they come back as soon as Po and Shifu are done training. And but then that's when they realize, like, yes, but now we can open the dragon scroll. And so they go in there, this wonderful ceremony getting the dragon scroll down. And then Po opens it. Well, Shifu opens it for Po. And then he like reads it and he screams in horror. And then it's blank.
Yeah.
It's blank. And so great.
Shifu was like, "No, I'm not supposed to look at it." Wait, what do you mean? Let me see that thing. Let me see that stupid thing. And he does the thing where he kind of closes it and opens it a few times. It's just like, right. But they don't actually. It's funny because they don't actually show you what it is. It like has this golden shine on like Poe's face, and they're like, "It's nothing," and they don't actually show it to you, and so you're just like, "What?"
Yeah, so they find that it's blank, and they're all just pretty much distraught. They're like,
Everyone's
well,
like, "Oh, Master Oogway was just a crazy old guy."
yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So they decide just to evacuate the entire valley because Tai Lung can literally kill all of them in like the span of like 5 minutes. So they evacuate the entire valley, and Shifu just says like, I won't be able to kill him, but I'll be able to hold him off, and that'll be like my that'll rectify like what I've done. You know, so. So that's essentially what happens. Tai Lung arrives at the temple and is trying to get the scroll, but he can't. And Shifu is like, because it's not there. And Shifu is holding him back in another fight sequence where Shifu is just getting beaten to a complete pulp, man. It's quite sad. Shifu is trying his best and he's holding his own, but Tai Lung is just like
at one point winds up with like fire fists and all kinds of other crazy
great
malarkey.
visuals happening there. Crazy. Yeah, he like crashes into like this like torch and like still has like fire on his fist and is like fighting Shifu with it. It's good stuff. Good stuff that like that it's like this is completely over the top, but it's like but it is awesome over the top, right? Yeah. So just before Shifu is about to actually get his, Po comes back up the big old steps. He's like all out of breath and whatnot.
Another stare guy.
And he's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm the Dragon Warrior." And he's like, "Him? He's a panda. You're a panda."
That's a great line. You're a panda. Like as if he doesn't know.
He's a panda. You're a panda. And he reveals that he has the scroll on him. So then Tai Lung comes at him immediately. But the greatest thing about this fight scene is not necessarily like Po is now as good as Tai Lung in that one little training montage. It's that Tai Lung has never trained for Po. Po is literally the most bouncy thing in this whole world. And so like virtually every blow that he can land on Po, he'll just be able to bounce back and get him back at that same amount of force. And Tai Lung just doesn't know how to deal with that. They tumble down steps and somehow Tai Lung gets his butt in his face, Po's butt in his face every single time. It's hilarious. They have this great like sort of keep away fight in the valley with everybody gone. Extremely, like calling back to the final scene in the training montage
Yeah.
when they're trying to play keep away with the dumpling.
There's like a few things in this scene that all call back, and like that's a really good. It's one of the best parts of this movie is like everything about it calls back to something that happened earlier, and we'll get to another one of those in just a bit. But like everything sort of happens. Everything in the fight is like, oh, he has to keep this thing away from Tai Long. Oh, just like the dumpling keep away game. And there's even in the dumpling keep away game, there was like a little shell game that happened. So it calls back to that where there's a little shell game. Or when, his butt lands on Tai Long's face, I was like, that would be just a stupid like laugh for the kids that like no one else in the audience would think is funny. Except for the fact that like right when they met, after he makes the panda joke, he's like, what are you going to do? Sit on me? And Poe says, don't tempt me. And it winds up that, throughout the course of the fight, he does sit on him a few times. Yeah. And so it like calls back to that. And the whole thing with even where it's like it's kind of a weird fight scene because it's like it isn't like Poe is actually beating him. It's more like Tai Long is beating himself on Poe, which feels a little Deus Ex Machina, except that like the first lesson that Shifu teaches Poe is like, oh, you identify your opponent's weaknesses and their strengths and you like use your strengths to nullify theirs. And you're like, oh, that's like exactly what's happening here is that he's like literally hitting him so hard and Poe is just so resilient and like endurance based, like that, like nothing really hurts him that he just kind of bounces back and like runs into him and puts his own force against him. And it's like, oh, that's like actually what's happening this time. Like, okay, like that actually works because they like set it up in such a clever way and it calls back to this stuff.
There's even a callback to the rocket chair that he makes for himself.
Yeah.
That he just uses this cart of fireworks to like zoom past Tai Long to get the dragon.
Yeah,
skull.
or that like that little what was that? The little punching bag thing where it's like, we use that to train children and prop open the door on hot days. Where like Poe's first training exercise was to punch it and he punches it and just bounce back and hits him. And like the entire fight with Tai Long is Tai Long hitting Poe and Poe basically just like bouncing back and hitting him. So like everything was set up in such a clever way where it's not like brutally obvious, but you're like, oh, they were like setting that's clever. Like, it's not the exact same, but it all has something to do with stuff that happened earlier.
There's even really a spot where the dragon scroll ends up on this really, really high perch, kind of like Monkey's almond cookies. And he has to like
envision it.
Yeah, exactly. And he has to be super acrobatic to sort of get up there. And Tai Lung is just like, the scroll is giving him powers, just like getting him up there. But then it comes to a head where Tai Lung finally gets the drop on him and literally drops him.
Like axe kicks him into oblivion.
Into like this giant crater and then just like
some like Dragon
smashes
Ball
down
Z
into
level
him.
stuff. Yeah.
Pretty much. One of those where like you just cut to a big wide shot and you just see this big shock wave, right?
Yeah.
So Poe's finally kind of down and out. And so Tai Lung gets the scroll and finds out, and we found this out a little bit earlier too. Actually, we should call back to that. We forgot totally about that.
He basically opens it up and finds out that it's like this gold parchment where it just like reflects your face back at you, and it's just like it's nothing. Like there's nothing here. And then they flash back to what like Papa Goose told him, basically.
Well, no, this was actually before a little bit.
Well, yeah. Right.
Basically, so Poe is leaving with his dad, and like kind of tells him like, yeah, it was all just nothing. And so his
dad's like, oh, good, now you can make noodles with me. It's like, oh, okay. Dad.
But his dad loves him, right? He knows, and so he tries to cheer him up by telling him the secret ingredient soup, and he just says, there is no secret ingredient. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's all just like in here, It's
all
like,
in your head.
Pretty much, yeah.
If you think something is special and you treat it like it's special, then it's special. It doesn't need a special ingredient or whatever.
So so Poe realizes that is what the dragon scroll is saying.
Yeah.
And so cutting back to now, he actually does explain that to Tai Lung, but Tai Lung just can't deal with that.
Yeah, Tai Lung like can't accept it, which is kind of cool too because it shows that like Poe got it because of who Poe is and like his mindset. It's not like that secret. It's like, the heavens have opened up and now Tai Lung is like too enraged to like understand that. Yeah.
So he gears up and gives him the biggest nerve attack ever. But
does nothing.
Which
also calls back to earlier in the movie because when Tigress is explaining the whole history, it's when Poe is in I think it's Mantis or Viper's room, and Mantis is trying to give him like some acupuncture to like help him through the day, and he's just having the worst time finding his nerves through all this fat or fur.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is.
He's like fat. I was gonna say fur, but basically he's just having the worst time with it, and so it's like, oh, that actually makes sense now why the nerve attacks don't work, because
Yeah.
you can't get to it through all this fur.
So he's doing it to him constantly, but it's just tickling Poe the whole time through and just laughing. Gosh, that's another like unexpected like moment that ends up in a lot of laughs too. And it's not like the scene where he actually gets his house rocked like is so jarring and comes out of nowhere. Like you're just sort of like, oh geez, I need to keep paying attention. You know what I mean? Like, and then it coming out from the big revelation to now laughing over the nerve attacks flows. It
Yeah.
still somehow
Yeah.
flows really well. So basically after that, again, just using his buoyancy to his advantage completely wrecks Tai Lung.
Yeah.
It comes to a big head where Tai Lung like completely flies at him.
Pulls a Wile E. Coyote when he flies at him.
And then Poe just uses his belly to shoot him directly 90 degrees up into the sky.
And then he comes out full Wile E. Coyote, leaving a giant hole in his shape.
Even his tail. And so he comes out completely disheveled like, you can't defeat me. You're just a big fat panda. And then he gets at him, but then Poe finally grabs him using the whooshy finger hold.
Which also calls back to earlier in the movie when Master Shifu used the technique on him, and Poe immediately recognized it because he knows everything about Kung Fu.
He goes like, oh, the whooshy finger hold. And Master Shifu's like, oh, you know this hold. Then I guess you know what happens when I flex my pinky like this. And he's like, no, like that.
You know what the hardest part of this move is? Cleaning up afterwards.
So fast forward to now, he grabs Tai Lung in that same way and lifts his pinky. Tai Lung is like, the whooshy finger hold. And then Poe is like, oh, you know this hold. But he's like, you're bluffing. You're bluffing. Master Shifu wouldn't have taught you this. And he goes like, no, I figured it out with
Skadoosh. The
And
one part in the movie where he actually uses that catchphrase, which was like advertised a lot.
it was.
But
That word is like completely Jack Black. Isn't that
Yeah.
weird? It's like the worst like comic onomatopoeia, like Batman, like
they used
skadoosh.
it perfectly because I feel like they had hyped it up so much leading into the movie that you like expected to be like, oh, this is gonna be a dumb running joke throughout the whole movie. But it wasn't. And when it actually happened, it was kind of satisfying that they actually used it. After
like
you saw it in all the ads.
Like a freaking like Lightning McQueen ka-chow thing.
Yeah.
Ugh. Good Lord. So he does the whooshy finger hold on him, and this grand ripple of like gold
chi
and
energy.
chi energy just flows miles away from the epicenter. Like, oh jeez.
and all the like evacuated villagers like, oh, what the?
What just happened?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's exactly what you think happened. Tai Lung is now nowhere to be seen.
Non-existent.
I had to do some research after this to see like
You have to know.
well, just to see like what the movie producers assume this was, you know, like what do they think this was? Were they just like, and then he puts his finger down and then gold explosion. Nobody was just sort of like gold explosion.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So they all go back into the valley because they're just like, what the crap just happened? In the midst of all the gold and all the chi,
Gold chi
comes
dust.
in this silhouette of the character that Poe describes in the very
Basically the
beginning of
character
the
who
movie.
he imagined himself as. Yeah.
Comes through, finding he's only wearing like a walk and a bib for some reason. And then happily ever after, essentially, after that. Because then afterwards they go back to Shifu. He tells Shifu what's happening. Shifu is still just like
Just laying on
a
the ground
bag
like,
of broken bones on the floor, just like, oh, I can't move. But Poe tells him like what's going on, and that actually gives him like full on inner peace. Again, saying that the Dragon Warrior will give him inner peace. And he does. And they just sort of like, I just want to lay here. Like, you just want to lay right here? Yes. Oh, okay, I'll join you. And they lay in silence for like 15 seconds.
Yeah, well, Poe looks like uncomfortable the entire time. Just like.
just like, I'm hungry. You want to get something to eat? And she's just like, yeah. And then end of movie.
That's the end of the movie.
Oh, what a
Man.
great movie.
Yeah.
We've kind of already explained like a lot of the bigger things that we really enjoyed about it. It's just like being able to call back to other things in that movie in a great climax, you know?
Yeah.
In a way that, like, even if you didn't realize that right from the get-go, because I didn't on the first, I've seen this movie a lot, but I've never really realized all those exact callbacks either. Not right away, at least.
They're subtle enough to where when you get them, it's like, oh wow, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But like, some of them are clear, right? Because the ones that are sort of closer to each other, like with the dumpling keep away and like the scroll keep away, like those are fairly close to each other. But like the space between like the punching bag in the end, like it's pretty spaced out. Or the space between like what was one of the other callbacks I mentioned? I'm not remembering, but some of the rocket chair is pretty obvious. Like you see that, and you're like, oh, okay, that one's cute. But like a lot of the callbacks are spaced out enough to where it's not like immediately obvious. It doesn't feel like they're forcing it down your throat, right? It's just like, oh, or the one where he's like, you have to use your opponent's strength against them or whatever. That like never really comes up again until the final battle, and they don't like come out and tell you like Poe's like, I understand your first lesson. Use their strength against them. Yes. It just shows you. It doesn't tell you. So they sort of leave it up to you to put the pieces together. It's like, oh, that's really clever. So when you figure it out, it's like you did it. And it's like your discovery. It's like, yeah, that was cool. And it also shows like a really intelligent vision of the movie from like front to back. Or like the secret ingredient to the noodles, right? Like that's one of the first thing you hear Poe's dad talking about. And it's not, you feel like it's like, oh, that's just something that crazy Poe's dad is talking about,
Crazy
whatever.
goose.
Yeah. But then it turns out like, oh, it wasn't just some like like it was actually a proper use of Chekhov's gun where like everything that's talked about winds up mattering in some way. So
It's great.
yeah.
It's great. My favorite thing about the movie is definitely the humor.
Yeah.
The humor is done. I mean, like that's just the best way to put it, is that the humor is not forced. It's completely organic. And it's completely all character driven as well. You know, like it's all these people are saying these funny things because of their characters.
Yeah.
If they're the straight man, some of the things they say are funny because they're the straight character, you know?
Yeah.
If they're not,
That's a lot of the interactions between like Oogway and Shifu.
it's just good.
Yeah.
It's just good. The way that these characters end up interacting with each other, all in all, like, you know, Oogway can mess with Shifu because they have a history, right?
Yeah.
But Oogway doesn't mess with Poe. Oogway like actually gives them like helpful proverbs and stuff, you know?
I mess with him a little bit. It's like,
Oh, I guess
totally.
yeah, totally, probably. Even sometimes like Mantis, like
yeah.
there's the scene that Dave was talking about with the acupuncture. This is the scene also where we find out Tai Long's backstory and a little bit of Tigress's, because Tigress is telling the story and she's just like, you know, rebuking him this whole way through. And
It's like, you don't take any of this seriously.
Yeah,
We put our
he's
whole
like,
life on the line.
Who doesn't take any of this seriously? And as he does, Poe makes this like crazy goofy face at just like, he has this like look of complete somber on his face, right? He's just like, you know, because he's being scolded, you know, just like, oh jeez, man. And then all of a sudden, like that, and Tigress is about to just give it to him, and the Mantis is just like, no, wait, that was me. I think I hit his facial nerve, and then he falls over, and then he's like, or his everything, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's good, and that's Seth Rogen too. That's a random role, I think, for him. That's the only thing I think is just weird about.
I think they just wanted someone with like a really deep voice to be this really small character, you know, just one of those little bits.
Yeah. It's some of the choices just sort of weird sometimes, I think. Like,
Well,
like
all of the five are like voiced by like somebody, right? They're voiced by a name.
yeah.
Because Tigress is Angelina Jolie, right? Mm-hmm. And who else is it?
Viper,
I always want to say Crane is David Crane, but it's not David Crane. It's David something
It's
else.
David Cross. You're not too far. It's David Cross. If you don't know him, I just know him as Tobias Funke from Arrested Development. Viper is Lucy Liu.
Viperess. It's important. She's a girl.
I think it's just called Viper, though.
I thought they called her Viper. I know Tigress and Tigress.
They say Tigress, but I think it's anyways.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, Dustin Hoffman is Shifu.
Yeah. Monkey is Jackie Chan.
But then Monkey is Jackie Chan.
Oh,
you
Master
know?
Viper, you're right.
Like, I'm not complaining really. Like, I don't really have much to complain about this movie. It's just like, you know, they put in Jackie Chan because it's a martial arts movie. You know, it's calling back to martial arts and whatnot. But like that's it, you know what I mean? Lucy Liu has done some martial arts stuff in her time. But like Angelina Jolie has done action movies, so I guess that sort of qualifies that. And like, but Seth Rogen, for goodness sakes, David Cross, for goodness sakes, like, I don't know. It's not a big thing. It's not a big deal.
I thought all their voice actors worked. They actually don't have a whole lot of lines in the movie, so they kind of have to have voices that are memorable. You know.
I guess.
I mean, except Monkey. If you didn't know he was Jackie Chan, you would never be like, "Oh, that's Jackie Chan."
I think actually the first time I saw the movie, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like when he talks, you're not like, "Oh, that's Jackie Chan."
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he only gets like 4 lines in the whole movie. But
Ian McShane is Tai Lung. I think Kung Fu Panda 1 and Kung Fu Panda 2 have like British actors as their villains.
yeah,
And they do it so well. They're villains. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I think both of the villains in 1 and 2 have like they're just villains, right? They don't really have redeeming qualities or like
well,
you know.
they have enough. So Tai Lung isn't like great, but at least you get the backstory where he like feels betrayed by Shifu. Like he has the moment where he's like, "You thought I was the Dragon Warrior, and you trained me to like be the Dragon Warrior, expect to be the Dragon Warrior, and then as soon as it was taken away from me, did you stand up for me? No, you just sided with your dumb old master who didn't know what the heck he was talking about." So like, there's like enough backstory, but I wouldn't. Actually, yeah. I mean, he's a good villain because there's just enough. He's threatening. He's like the cool villain who feels like he's got everything planned. All he needs to escape from this maximum security prison is like a duck feather, basically, and he just makes it work. He's just like BA, and he's also very like calm and collected, but he's also like just psycho enough to where it like basically completely puts him on edge against Poe, and that's sort of his downfall, right?
Yeah.
And so, but he gets enough backstory, and then like the Peacock in Kung Fu Panda 2 is just like one of the best villains in like animated films, and I'll save that for when we talk about that movie,
Yeah, we'll just
which
talk
I'm
about
really
that later.
excited about. But yeah, both these movies do a really good job with their villains being exactly who they need to be. So
I think we're probably in the same in thinking that this was an unexpected joy. I mean, when you see Kung Fu Panda with the lead as Jack Black, you probably assume to see scenes like the training scene, the initial training scene where he's just like
getting beat up.
yeah, like you probably expect to see that, you know, and if you didn't see that, it'd be kind of weird. And you'd probably expect a final fight scene to be similar to what we saw too, but like this was still not just a kid's movie, you know?
Because
like
it takes itself like the message of sort of being that's another thing that calls back, right? Because when Poe is like, I came up here because yeah, it hurt when you like beat on me, but it hurt just being myself. So I stayed here because I thought like maybe you could change me into someone else, right? And then the whole message of the movie again winds up being like, oh, I just kind of need to be myself. And me being a big fat panda turns out to be exactly what like the world needs in this one exact moment, right? And it doesn't force it down your throat by being like, oh, you didn't need to change me the whole time. Like I just had to be me. Like it's a callback to that, but it doesn't force you to recognize it. Like leaves it there like, oh, like he didn't have to like that was his whole thing. He's like, you need to change me. And like, how are you going to change me? And Shifu was like, I don't know how I'm going to change you. And it turns out he didn't need to change him. He just needed to understand him, right? He didn't need to change him so he could train him just like Tigress and them. He needed to realize like, oh, this is how this guy works, right? This is how this guy fights. This is how this guy trains. This is how he operates. Like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. And so it's easy to say that's just a schmaltzy kid's message, like just be yourself, man, and like everything will work out, or like it needs you, but it handles it very well because like ultimately that is a good message. It's just sort of become something we like snub our noses at because it's always delivered in the most cheesy Kingdom Hearts like ways possible, you know? And this movie just does it right and displays it in the right way. Like it's weird because like Poe wins and the 5 like respect him, but it doesn't feel like now Poe is all powerful. It's just like, no, he's him. And the Valley needed him in that moment. It didn't need Tigress. It didn't need Shifu. It didn't need Oogway. It needed him. Like, and, you know, not because he's so great, but just because of who he is, kind of. And, like, Shifu needed him to bring him inner peace. Because, like, as he's training him, you start to see Shifu be, like, happier in the training and start to enjoy Kung Fu more. Whereas before, you know, they even, like, joke around how he's just, like, a grumpy old man and never smiles and whatever. And it delivers that message really, really nicely. And the interaction between Poe and his dad is like really sweet. And you get that they like care about each other. And I don't know, it all feels Jack Black is one of those actors who, yes, he's known for like being crazy and stuff, but everything he like does and says feels very sincere.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're like you believe his characters because he feels like he's just being so real with you in this weird over the top way, right? So that's a big part of why the movie works and is not just a kids movie. Like it'll get the adults in the feels a little bit too.
There's nothing excuse me. There's nothing like uncomfortable about this movie either. Like there's tension at times, you know, like any good movie should have that sort of direction, but like there's nothing uncomfortable, you know? The like you just said, the relationship with Poe and his dad is nice. Even like the tension between Shifu and Poe at times is not,
or like Tigress and Poe.
Yeah, it's not uncomfortable. It's like warranted, you know, and like
and
you probably know that it's gonna be rectified by the end too. Like it's, you know, it's a kids movie at the end of the day, I think. But nothing about it is so uncomfortable that like I don't see how anybody couldn't enjoy this movie.
Yeah,
straight up. I don't really see. I could see people being like, "Oh, I don't like Jack Black" or whatever like that. But like,
I feel like you just had to come in really snobby, right? You have to come in with like, "Oh, that movie's for kids," and like, "Oh, this humor isn't for me," and not really paying attention to how it's delivered, right? It's like, "Oh, it's just slapstick humor where his butt's on his face. How droll!"
Yeah,
which is like what you expect, but it delivers it well. Like it does it all so well that you're like, you know. That's how like all humor really should be handled, and especially this kind, because it wouldn't work otherwise.
Right.
So it just delivers everything really well and really convincingly.
Yeah, I mean, and
everything looks gorgeous. We barely talked about like the colors they use.
Yeah, the color palette always has this like it's either like cool with like jade colors because of the Jade Palace. Or it has this like yellow and like red sort of like hue like palette to it.
Yeah.
Even the prison scene, the prison breakout scene contrasts with this like deep dark like blue and this like vibrant like blood red.
Yeah, this torch that's like not really a torch color. It's like this crimson red type thing. Yeah, it's really nice.
It's a nice contrast.
Yeah.
Each of the Furious Five also is like, you know, again, either green or like with that like sort of red or like yellow tint
orange,
to them.
Yeah, like Tigress. The Viperess has like a really interesting color palette where she like really pops. It's really nice. I like her design a lot.
Mantis.
Viper, not Viperess. I can say that now.
Mantis is all green, you know, because he's a Mantis.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, just this movie's a winner.
Yeah.
This movie's a winner.
I always think of the scene like where they pulled, like that was the visual scene that got me the most, where they like get the dragon scroll and they're like in the Jade Palace and it's like looking out to a sunset and like the pillars are like a really nice gold with these like sharp edges. It looks like almost hand drawn. It's really gorgeous. And the music's all good. On one hand, you're like, oh, they used a pentatonic scale. Like that's cool. Like you think like, oh, anybody can kind of do that, but they just, I don't know. It all sounds really good.
Well, they used it and they also like expanded on it too. Like because so like I said, Hans Zimmer and John Powell, they're the writers of this. Everybody knows Hans Zimmer. John Powell is the sole score composer behind How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh, okay.
And that's a crazy good score. How to Train Your Dragon score is better than Kung Fu Panda's, and Kung Fu Panda's is really good. From what I understand, and this is all inference, but like I know I read something about like it was an interview with Hans Zimmer, and he was like, you know, what do you think of like your work with John Powell, yada yada, and Hans Zimmer said something to the effect of like, you know, like I really wish him well, like in his future endeavors. John Powell does a lot of things way better than I can, and I want to say that maybe Hans Zimmer's referring to like his melodies, because I really, really do believe that the main melody of Kung Fu Panda, which is like Oogway's theme, is
that the main theme of the movie? I always think of the main movie theme is more the like kind of at the beginning where he's like fighting off the baddies, and it's kind of like a jazzy remix of that.
I don't think it is.
Well, it comes back, but that comes back in Kung Fu Panda 2. Like,
yeah,
it's a
so
recurring
does
theme.
the in Kung Fu Panda 2 as well.
Yeah, I guess it's debatable. You hear them both a lot.
Well, this theme is better. I really do think that John Powell wrote that. And Hans Zimmer, I mean, I'm sure they collaborate. I don't know to what degree. The score is not necessarily the focus of the movie. There's a remix of Kung Fu Fighting at the end of the movie as well too.
Yeah.
But yeah, the score is good. I don't know if I don't own the whole soundtrack. I just own the bit of score when Oogway, it's called Oogway Ascends, so that it's that scene.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. This is definitely probably like a crown jewel, I think, in DreamWorks's filmography so far.
Yeah.
And it definitely was, remember the preceding movie was the B movie.
We went from the B movie, and like coming into this, I didn't see this in theaters either. And I don't blame you, because like coming out of the B movie, it was like Jerry Seinfeld as a bee, and now we'll give you Jack Black
as
a
a panda.
Like you're like, oh gosh, like
You guys,
please stop,
please.
Before that was like Will Smith as the fish.
As fish.
Yeah, but this one turned out to be like they're all named after animals. Shark Tale, Bee movie.
Madagascar.
Oh yeah, I don't
Let's
remember.
not forget that movie happened.
When did that happen? Was that after?
No, this was way before.
Yeah, because I remember the animation and that definitely not being as good.
No, it was like
this.
sometime after Shrek 2, I think.
That movie was all right.
I actually never seen any of the Madagascars.
Well, now Jeremy's gonna hate you because like that's legit one of his and his family's favorite movie.
Oh,
I do
really?
know that for a fact. Yes, I actually saw it for the first time with them. It was good.
Well, then maybe I guess we'll have to see it then.
Yeah, we should do that eventually.
Is it worth it?
Was that the response to The Wild, or was The Wild the response to Madagascar?
The Wild was a response to Madagascar.
Okay.
This was the first time where Disney was on the run. Because up until then, DreamWorks was on the run for Disney.
Yeah.
But then, the Wild from Disney was the first response where Disney was like, "Wow, these guys are we have to really quickly let's just poop out this movie here."
Following Dinosaur, Disney kind of went into a bit of a hole. And DreamWorks didn't take advantage of it as much as they probably could have, but enough. I would say I think Madagascar is worth watching. I think it's a funny movie. It's clever.
all right.
So
I ain't got nothing against it.
yeah.
I just isn't there a Baja Men song in there? They're like, oh, da, 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 da. Why am I asking you this?
Who's the Baja
What?
Man?
Oh, are you kidding me?
Are they like the Beach Boys?
Are you kidding me?
Is that what they grew up
No,
into?
no. I am dead serious this time. Are you kidding me with this? You don't know the name the Baja Men who let the dogs out?
Oh, was that them?
Oh.
Oh,
Do you have anything else you want to say about the movie? Because I want to leave.
great movie. 9 out of 10. Go see.
This always happens. I feel like this always happens. Whenever we're doing a movie cast, I'm just all like, oh yeah, didn't the Baja Men do that one? You're just like, who is the Baja Men? It would be much easier for you to tell me all the stuff you do know than all the stuff you don't know.
That's very true. Very, very true.
My goodness. Are we done?
You're done, that's for sure. Stick a fork in him because he's done. All right. We're done.
All right.
Great movie.
Great movie.
Good job, Jack
Great
Black.
movie. So that's Kung Fu Panda 1. At some point in the future, hopefully in the near future, we're going to talk about Kung Fu Panda 2, which may
hope so.
be one of the best animation sequels of all time.
Yep.
Maybe, and I'm totally
I'll say
saying
it
that
is.
as well.
I'll say it is.
I mean, I haven't really given it much thought because let's be honest.
Because, let's be honest, there's other ones we really have to think of.
That's true.
Tarzan 2.
Is there a Tarzan 2?
Yeah. Some straight to DVD BS right there.
Oh, it probably is. Yeah.
Oh, it totally is. I watched that on a tour bus. It's terrible.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's like a vignette of 3 random stories. It starts out with Tarzan. It's like, oh, Tarzan, you're the king of the jungle. And then it turns into something of oh, I remember this one time. And it's just a movie of 3 vignettes of Tarzan.
That is.
It's like if you were watching 3 episodes of the Tarzan animated series.
That is so
Which
offensive.
I don't think actually existed.
That is so
It's a
offensive. Is this what you think of me as a moviegoer? This is what I want to see?
Thanks, Disney. Anyway.
Oh man. All right. So yeah, like I said, we'll be doing Kung Fu Panda 2 in the future, and we're gonna have to do that a lot of justice because we have a lot of love for that movie.
Yeah.
I think Dave especially. I really love that movie too, but I think Dave loves it even more.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll give it that much time as well. And just to show that DreamWorks doesn't just make stinkers. They really don't.
They don't just make the B movie and Shrek.
So
And Road to El Dorado.
oh, good Lord.
We'll have to do Prince of Egypt sometime too. That'd be a fun one.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to.
Yeah.
All right, so thanks for sticking with us on another movie cast. Hopefully you love Kung Fu Panda as much as we do. If you actually don't,
What is wrong with you?
well, please chime in. I want to know, and I want to tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah.
So, again, thanks for staying with us. We'll give out our special thanks as usual. Special thanks to Danny Barrett-Huvert for the artwork and to the combined efforts of Rob KTA, OC Remix, Expert Novice for the intro and outro music. And we actually have some more stuff planned for you guys in the future. We are not done yet. You cannot get rid of us. So
Yes, yeah.
we will see you on the next one.
Take care.